Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to The Bunker. We have another voicemail from an anonymous caller. Let's listen to what they have to say.
Hello, Lloyd. Sorry to remain anonymous. I really just don't have the courage or freedom of speech without consequence like you do. Um, I really do appreciate uh, all of those things that you do have and all that you do for the community. And I really do admire your seeking out truth and justice for those who uh, oftentimes aren't able to receive it. So thank you for those things. I was calling for your advice, if I can. I was watching the video you just posted about giving information to authorized individuals on the latest leaked video, assuming it would be men of some kind of responsibility in the congregation. I experienced a situation where a man in a large truck creepily went by my house, went to the corner of the property, drove by slowly again after he turned around. And it was so weird. I took issue with it. I live in a neighborhood not too far away from people that are on the offenders list. And so I popped my head out the door and asked if I could help them to show them that I had noticed their creepy activity. And there was a man in his mid 50s that was in the truck and yelled back, "Is this so and so's residence?" And they said our last name. And it kind of scared me. And I just yelled back, "What of it?" And he then answered back, "Well, I'm new to the congregation and was just stopping by." I was pretty angry, actually, at that point. I found it pretty rude, creepy, not really showing any respect for privacy. And I yelled back to him. I says, "Do you know my wife?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, do you have her number?" And he said, "Yes." And then that's when I noticed that he at least had his wife with him in the vehicle, and I was at least comforted to see that. But I yelled back to him, "Well, then call ahead. You know, COVID's on. I really don't appreciate this." And he didn't say goodbye or anything. He just drove off, and I was so peeved at this point that I found the behavior just so weird. It was stalker-ish. It really bothered me, and I decided I was going to call one of the elders of the congregation I still had the number um, to at least express myself. And it's there that I learned that the couple were actually from another state and had moved into the recently merged congregation, which had now doubled in size and was full of strangers to begin with. And the guy wasn't even a ministerial servant. He wasn't an elder, but he received our full information. And I have young children. You know, Watchtower has CSA problems, and to me, this is exactly why. I'm completely unnerved. I really would like advice on how to make it clear that this is not acceptable without seeming opposed, giving my wife the freedom to pretty much leave on grounds of spiritual destitution or opposition. Because to me, this has got to be like borderline illegal. It's certainly dangerous to my kids, and it feels altogether rude. I just was wondering if you could weigh in, if you had any advice on how to handle this. It's really adding to my already nearly unmanageable anxiety of trying to just be fated with a preemie spouse and young children. So I'd really appreciate if you had something to say on it, but I know you're really busy. So thanks for just listening to the voicemail, I guess. And you can use it however you like, in a video or not or whatever, but feel free to contact me with advice if you can. Thank you so much. Bye.
Wow. Well, I will use this in a video, in this video indeed, because I think this is incredibly shady, inappropriate behavior, and it well highlights just how sloppy and lazy and frivolous the organization's approach to privacy and data protection is. I mean, for some random dude who isn't even an elder or servant to be apparently given your address and given your wife's phone number so that they can do this weird, creepy drive-by where you don't even know who they are. How is that in any way appropriate? And I guess I have a few more questions than answers for you. I don't really have any answers because your situation sounds incredibly complicated, as I will come to. My question would be, when you were speaking to the elder who you still had the number for, and he divulged that this was some dude who'd come in from out of state and was moving into the newly merged congregation, surely you asked the elder how he'd come across the data, and if so, what did the elder say? What was the explanation that you were given when you contacted the elder as to how this person got a hold of your address and your wife's phone number? I feel as though that part of the story is kind of key. And I also would like to know, obviously you can't give me this information because it's a voicemail. I'd be fascinated to know how your wife reacted to this. You mentioned your wife is PME, physically in, mentally in other words, a fully believing Jehovah's Witness. That's one of the main, or the main complicating factor in your situation. How did all of this come across to her? What was her reaction to this? It sounds almost as though this was not a big deal for her. This is perfectly normal for some stranger to rock up in a truck with his wife, having her phone number. Is she comfortable with this? And if she is comfortable with this, why is she comfortable? How can you be comfortable with data just flying around willy-nilly to the point where your number ends up being handed over to a total stranger for no apparent reason? Because they're not even an elder or a ministerial servant. They have no real reason to be in possession of that data. Is there a part of this story that perhaps you're missing? Could it be, for example, that, I don't know, this is a long-lost relative of your wife or someone that your wife knew at some point, and you're just being kept out of the loop on a certain issue because you're no longer attending meetings and you're no longer believing? Are you in the dark? Because so many things about this story are messed up. I have to wonder whether there's a big chunk of the story missing here. And I'd love to know what the full story is, because what we're hearing is, again, based on what you've told me, completely inappropriate. And as you say, borderline criminal, borderline illegal behavior. You have a right to privacy. You have a right to your details not being handed over to total strangers so that you're not being harassed at your home. Now, where it gets complicated is that you object to this behavior and it seems your wife doesn't. And specifically, your wife is a believing Jehovah's Witness, and you're concerned that your reaction to this incident might further alienate you from your wife to the point where she has grounds to separate from you because you are endangering her spirituality. You're essentially making it difficult for her to be a Jehovah's Witness. This being the case, your options are limited. Your situation is complicated, and ultimately it's got to be your call, quite frankly, as to how far you take this. it could be that even though you're justifiably freaked out by this incident, you feel as though the possibility of your marriage ending is infinitely worse than putting up with the status quo and kind of pretending that this never happened. If it were me and this sort of stuff was going on, I would be in touch with the police. I would be getting a lawyer to draft a cease and desist, and I would be getting this cease and desist letter sent out to the congregation in question, making it very clear that privacy must be respected. We do not give consent for personal information to be passed on to third parties. In fact, we'd appreciate if you don't hold any personal information on us, etc., etc. I would be going nuclear on this. I would be involving, to the degree I could, the authorities, and making sure the congregation were under no illusions that this is unacceptable and wouldn't be tolerated moving forward, and that there would be legal consequences to this sort of thing continuing. But again, that's me. I'm not in your situation with a fully believing Jehovah's Witness wife and a marriage that could potentially implode if I took that course of action. So the ball is completely in your court. You have to make the call. You have to decide, to what extent you can put up with this sort of stuff, this sort of crazy behavior for the sake of your marriage. So I'm afraid I don't really have a clear answer for you, because I don't know. There are so many different variables that you need to weigh. But I do think it's worthwhile playing your voicemail message, irrespective of whether I have a clear answer or not, because people need to know that this sort of stuff is going on, that this is how porous the organization is when it comes to data and the way data is handled. I joked about it in the video that you're referring to, the fact that they say, oh, if you give us your personal data, don't worry, we will make sure only authorized persons are able to see it. And it's completely in the dark as to who these authorized persons are. Surely an authorized person can be anyone that the organization deems fit to receive this information. And your story perfectly demonstrates how farcical the organization's approach to data and privacy is. So I was very happy that you left this message and gave me permission to play it despite your precarious situation. It's interesting you started the message by saying that you lack courage. Well, I think the opposite. I think you're very brave. You're very courageous to leave this message. You are very smart and discerning to be aware of the dangers and to be taking all reasonable precautions to protect your family. So I think you're to be applauded, both for your bravery and for doing everything possible to stay safe and keep your family safe. And I do sympathize with your situation, and I hope one way or the other it will improve at some point, because it sounds like a really difficult situation that you're in, and I do sympathize. But that's all I really have to say on this particular voicemail. If you would like to leave a voicemail, the thing to do is go to speakpipe.com/Cedars, remembering to indicate clearly if you don't want me to play your message on my channel. But that's all we have time for. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lloyd Evans channel for more such videos. And as always, thank you for watching.